Last week I began a review of 4 reasons for defending the King James Bible by Dr. D.A. Waite. It's just a small booklet that Dr. Waite wrote for his larger book, Defending the King James Bible. Reason 1 in Dr. Waite's book, this is on the smaller booklet, on page 6, the King James Bible has superior original language texts. This correctly implies that the various versions and perversions of the Bible have inferior texts, both Hebrew and Greek. The King James Bible has a superior Old Testament Hebrew text. Number 1, the 2 competing Hebrew Old Testament texts. The false one, edited by Ben Asher, and the true one, edited by Ben Kayham. This Ben Kayham Masoretic Hebrew text was the unquestioned Hebrew text for the next 400 years. Nobody questioned it. In fact, Rudolf Kittel, in his first 2 editions of 1906 and 1912, used that text in his Biblica Hebraicum. It was not until 1937 that he switched Hebrew texts and substituted the spurious and inferior text which uses the Leningrad manuscript. If you do not start with an absolute, where there is no doubt, you're going to continue to move and to accept more and more changes. Where can you stop? Where can you stop once you have begun to slide? The Dean Burgon Society and its Articles of Faith have stated, and I quote, "We believe that the texts which are the closest to the original autographs of the Bible are the traditional Masoretic Hebrew text for the Old Testament." Number 2, the new versions attempt to correct the Hebrew text in at least 19 different ways. And he gives several of these. I believe he goes all the way up to 14 that he gives. There are at least 19 methods they use to correct the true text, Hebrew text. Number 1, the Septuagint. It is the Old Testament written in Greek. Dr. Waite writes, "It is rotten. Its text is corrupt." Secondly, pure conjecture. They might say, "I don't have any proof, but I think it sounds better this way." Some correct the Hebrew with the Syriac version. Some corrupt the Hebrew with just a few Hebrew manuscripts. Some correct the Hebrew with the Latin Vulgate. Some correct the Hebrew with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, he has written more than what I'm reading, but just for brevity of time, I'm reading just portions of what Dr. Waite has written. Then he goes on to say concerning the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls probably 99% of the time did concur with the Hebrew text that underlines the King James Bible. But in the places where they don't, we should stick to the Masoretic traditional Hebrew text. Some use quotations, and this is the New International Version that he's mentioning here. Use quotations from Jerome to correct the Hebrew text. Some use Josephus to correct the Hebrew text. Some use a variant Hebrew reading in the margin to correct the Hebrew text. Some use words in the consonantal, that's consonantal text, divided differently to correct the Hebrew text. Some use quotations from Jerome, Aquila, the Samaritan Pentateuch, to correct the Hebrew text. Some use the Hebrew Targums, Theodotion, to correct the Hebrew text. Still others use a different set of Hebrew vowels to correct the Hebrew text. Some use an ancient Hebrew scribal tradition to correct the Hebrew. Some use the Biblia Hebraica or of Kittel or Stuttgartensia to correct the Hebrew. These are just the different methods that other English versions have used to correct the Masoretic traditional Hebrew Old Testament text, thus changing the very words of God. God authorized the Jews to be the exclusive guardians of his words. The Jews were to be the guardians of the Old Testament Hebrew text. God did not give that privilege and responsibility to any other race or people. Romans 3:1. What advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there of circumcision? Verse 2. Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God. The Jews were meticulous and reverent in the copying and recopying of our Hebrew manuscripts. Now, to conclude this, I quote Psalm 119 and verse 9. And one of the reasons we are finding our society and our churches in the ways that they are today is because they have exchanged the Word of God for versions that delete many words from the original words of God. Psalm 119 and verse 9, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed thereto according to thy word. May God use what has been written here and what I have quoted to your benefit. And if you're not using the King James Bible, may God lay it upon your heart to have what God has given us translated accurately into the English language. Thank you for watching.